Okay, in this tutorial what we're going to do is we're going to create a guessing game where the user has to guess a number between 1 and 1000. Don't worry, I'm not a complete psychopath because if the user guesses too high, we're going to tell them they've guessed too high, and if they've guessed too low, we're going to tell them they've guessed too low. So hopefully they'll be able to get it, in around 6, 7, 8, 9 guesses. So I've already written out the code just so I can demo the game to you. So I genuinely don't know what the answer is. I'll take a few guesses and then we'll code it out together. So if I guess the number 1, hopefully I don't win. So I guess too low. If I guess the number 999, I guess too high. So what I'll do is I'll just start taking midpoints. So if I guess 500, I guess too low. I'll go up to 750. I guess too high. I'm going to go to 850. Oh, sorry, I guess too high. So I'll go to 600. I guess too low. Right, we'll go to 650. Guess too high. Okay, I'm going to go for 625. Too low. Let's do 640. Too low. 645. Guess too high. All right. 644. Guess too high. 642. Ah, congratulations, so on. Okay, so it took me a few guesses. So that is essentially the game we're going to code up. So here is how I did it. I'll talk us through it and then we'll delete the code and we'll write it out together. Basically, at the very end here, we have our call to invoke the function play game. So basically, I've used the function keyword. We have a function here with no arguments to be passed in, so no parameters defined there. It's a play game function. We have the opening curly brace and the closing curly brace down the end, and everything in between is the code that's going to run when the play game call asks or tells the function to run. So what I do is I say mat.random and times that by 1000. Then I floor all of that, so discard whatever is after the decimal place, and I just add 1 to it just to give us a number between 1 and 1000. Okay? I store that in a variable number. So we've seen the mat object before, so this is the mat object. So if you use dot notation, you can call an inbuilt method. So a method is just a function that's already been defined in JavaScript. We've been writing our own functions, but we'll start talking more about methods, i.e. an inbuilt function in JavaScript, a superpower that's already available to us as we go through the course. So we've seen mat.random before, we've seen mat.floor before. Then what I do is I just prompt the user to guess a number between 1 and 1000. So that's just a string there. We've seen strings before. We're prompting out the message. Then what I do is I wrap all of that in parentheses and just basically convert it to type number, and then I store it in user guess. Then what I do is I just create a Boolean variable. I say let user wins and assign it the value of false. And because that Boolean has a value of false, I'm able to use that as a condition to run the while loop. So our game really, a lot of it is run inside of the while loop. So basically, we know, we've seen while loops previously, that if this evaluates to true, whatever condition we're evaluating, it'll run the loop. So while essentially user wins is not equal to true and user wins is equal to false, while user wins is not equal to true, so initially it's false not equal to true. Well, is false not equal to true? False is not equal to true, so that evaluates to true, therefore we enter the loop. Now, the first condition I test for is if the user wins. If the user guesses the right number, what I do is I just assign user wins a Boolean value of true, so I override the value of this variable here, and basically that breaks us out of the loop. We won't enter the loop again, okay? Because then what we're testing for is true is not equal to true, true is equal to true, so true not equal to true would evaluate to false. Hence the loop stops running. And then I just let the user know they won. I just alert out, congratulations, you won. Then what I do is I have an else if, and basically I just say if the user guess is greater than the number they're supposed to guess, I just say alert, you guessed too high, and then they have to guess again. So I just say user guess is equal to number, prompt guess a number between 1 and 1000. If they guess too low, So if user guess is less than the number, I just alert out that should be you guessed too low. That was a typo. And then I prompt the user to enter a guess. Else, if something else happens, I don't know what could possibly happen, I just alert out system error and, please guess again. So this is all the code we're going to write in this tutorial. So just delete that, press save. So all the code is gone, and just refresh. So now nothing happens. So we're going to code this out together. Well, we know, first of all, we need to create a function. So we're going to have our function. I called it play game. So this function is not going to have any arguments passed into it. So we have our curly braces, we have our parentheses, and then we have our curly braces. Let me just take a sip of water. I'm so sorry. Awesome. Okay, that was really good water. Now what I need to do is I need to create a variable. I'm going to call it number. So this is the number the user has to guess. So I'm going to say let number be equal to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say mat.random to generate a random number. Okay, we've seen mat.random before. It goes from 0 up to like just less than 1, so 0.99999. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that by 1000, okay? And then I'm going to floor that. So we've seen mat.floor before, mat.floor. So really what I'm doing here is I'm passing mat.random times 1000 into mat.floor, and it'll just disregard everything after the decimal place. So that actually basically gives us a number between 0 and 99999. So if I add 1 to it, we get a number between 1 and 1000. Okay, so that's what that piece of code does there. Semicolon to end the statement. Then what we want to do is we want to get a guess from the user and store that in a variable. So I'm going to call it user guess. I'm going to say let user guess. I'm going to use camel case there, so note that the G is a capital letter. And I'm going to assign that the value of number and then prompt. So really with prompt here, all I'm doing is just prompting the user. I'm saying guess a number between 1 and 1000. And then remember, if the user presses a key on their keyboard, that is of type string. So I just wrap it inside of number with a capital N, and basically then the user guess is now of type number. And that just helps when we're doing the comparisons, checking the the number of type number basically with the user guess, which we do not want to be of type string. Then what we need to do is we need to keep track of whether the user has won the game or not. So initially the user has not won the game because they haven't even taken a guess. So we know we can keep track of whether something is true or not in JavaScript by using Boolean true or false. So we have to store that in a variable. So I'll say let user wins be equal to false. Okay, so when the game starts, user wins, the Boolean variable that keeps track of whether the user has won the game or not, that is assigned a value of false. And then what we do is we have our while loop. So we have while, our while keyword to create a while loop, some condition we're testing for inside of parentheses, and then our opening and closing curly brace. So we want this loop to run while the user has not won the game. So we can say while user wins is not equal to true. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do our check to see if the user has won the game. So we have various conditions to check for. So for example, has the user won the game? Have they guessed too high? Have they guessed too low? Did something else happen? So let's just test for if they are very lucky and get the number right in the first go. So we have our if statement. So now we're just going to check to see if user guess. So remember, user guess is when we prompt the user, we ask them to enter a number between 1 and 1000. If they do that correctly, we convert it to type number and store it in the variable user guess. So now we're comparing to see if user guess is equal to number that the computer has randomly generated, because we've used mat.random to get a random number between 0 and just under 1. We've multiplied it by 1000 and we floored it. Oh, and I forgot to add 1. Awesome. I'm glad I checked there. Okay, so now if user guess is equal to that number, they've won the game. So first of all, before we tell them, we want to just update the value of user wins to be true to make sure that the game stops. So basically, we just say user wins is equal to true. Remember, we've already declared the variable user wins up here, so you don't need to use the let keyword here because the variable has already been declared essentially. And then what we need to do is just alert out to the user, let them know that they've won. So we'll do it in capital letters. We'll say, congratulations, you won the game, which is pretty awesome. Congrats to them. Then what we need to do is, in the else if, we're going to check to see if the user has guessed too high. So we can check for that by saying if user guess is greater than the number that the computer generated. If that's the case, we basically need to alert out to the user that they've guessed too high. So we can say alert, you've guessed, you guessed, you have guessed, you've guessed. Whoops. Let's just do, let's keep it simple. I don't want to be escaping strings in this tutorial. Let's just say you guessed too high. Awesome. And then basically what we need to do is we need to get the user to guess again. So let's just copy this code here and paste that in. Then we have our check to see if the user has actually guessed too low. So if user guess is less than number, what do we want to do? Well, we want to let them know that they've actually guessed too low. So we'll say alert, you've guessed too low. Just want to care about our code. So I just want to indent that slightly for readability. Awesome. Okay. So alert, you've guessed too high. No, you've guessed too low. Awesome. And then I just want to prompt the user to guess again. And then lastly, I just want to have a condition in case something else happens. So maybe they actually type in a message or something. You know, I don't want the game to break. So basically, the computer will alert, you know, system error, or I've no idea what's going on. So we'll say system error, try again. And yeah, that's, oh yeah, and we also need to get them to guess again. Okay, awesome. Okay, so let me just review this, make sure I'm happy with it, because I forgot to add a 1 there, I apologize. So I haven't called or invoked the function yet. So if I go to my file, sorry, if I go to Google Chrome, nothing has happened. So as you can tell, I have no idea what the number is going to be here. We could console it out in the, you know, console.log number, but it's kind of more fun for me recording if I don't know the answer, so we'll just play one more time. So basically, right before I call or invoke the function, so I need to call the function. Actually, let's call the function. Let's play the game, and then we'll just talk through the code again. So play game. Right, this is going to play now. Have I done everything correctly? So we function, play game. We have our number. That looks good. Yeah, user wins. Okay, I'm happy this is going to work. So let me just play it one more time, and then we will talk through the code. So I'm going to guess 500. I guess too low. I'll do 750. I guess too low again. All right, I'll do 900. I guess too high. I'm going to do 850. I guess too low. If I do 875, I guess too low. All right, if I do 888, I guess too high. What about 885? Guess too low. All right, 887. Guess too high. 886. Congratulations, you won the game. Awesome. Okay, great. So guys, I'll just talk you through this briefly. So remember, basically, when we write all of this code inside of our function, we have to actually call or invoke the function to start the game. So that's what I do down here. I basically write out the name of the function, play game, parentheses, no parameter is defined here, so no arguments passed in, semicolon to end the statement. The game is now being played. So I've used the function keyword because we're writing a function. We have given it a name of play game. There's no parameters defined. We have our opening curly brace here and our closing curly brace there. So everything in between is part of the play game function. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get the computer to basically generate a number. And the computer does that for us. So what we do is we basically say mat.random to get a number between 0 and just under 1, and we multiply that by 1000. We pass all of that into mat.floor. So the mat object is built into JavaScript, and we can call .floor, this inbuilt method, to essentially round down. So that gives us a number between 0 and 999. And by just adding 1 at the end of this expression here, we basically get a number between 1 and 1000. We store that in the variable number. Then what we have to do is we have to prompt the user to guess a number. So we have prompt here, and inside of parentheses we have our string. We say guess a number between 1 and 1000. We convert that to type number because that will help us with the comparisons later on, and we store that in a variable called user guess. Then we need to keep track of whether the user has won the game or not. So we basically keep track of that in a variable called user wins, and we've initially signed that the Boolean value of false, because how can the user have won the game if they haven't even guessed yet? So that is set to false. Then we have our while loop. So the game is going to be playing while the user has not won, i.e. while user wins is not equal to true. So we've seen the while loop before, we've seen negating, and then what we do is we have our checks. So if hypothetically the user guesses the right number in the first go or in any go, we say if user guess is strictly equal to number, so they're the same value in the same data type, we basically update that the user has won the game. So user wins is now true. So user has won, and we basically just alert the user to let them know that they've won. Remember, if user wins is equal to true, we'll break out of the while loop. The while loop will stop running, because then what happens is user win will have a value of true, and we're checking to see if true is not equal to true. That will, evaluate to false. The condition no longer evaluates to true, therefore the while loop no longer runs. If hypothetically the user has not yet won the game and the game is in session, we're in the while loop. If they guess too high, if the user guess is greater than the number they need to guess, we just alert out you guessed too high, and we prompt the user to enter a guess again. If conversely they guess too low, we do the check and we let the user know they've guessed too low. We say alert, you've guessed too low, and we ask them to guess again. Else, if something else happens, I just say there's an error and I ask them to guess again. If you wanted to make this more interesting, you could even limit the user to a number of guesses to add a bit of pressure. Hopefully you're getting more comfortable now with JavaScript as we go through the course. I will paste this code in the video underneath. I hope you enjoyed that one, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.